that, Dr. Ben-Levi, I'd like to hear your take on this, since the President Donald Trump has come out and stated that he would much rather see a diplomatic solution, a solution that will not come to bloodshed for the sake of the Iranians, to put it clearly, because naturally the power disparity here is really significant, would be an understatement if we'd use it in one word.
Okay, well, I think it's obvious that Trump would prefer to have a deal that, and avoid an actual military confrontation. I think it's without us insight to remember that during his first administration, he was on the one hand very much supportive of maximum pressure. It took him a while to get there. Debated whether they should, leave the JCPOA for a good year and a half before they actually did it, and then started ramping up the maximum pressure. And even then, at some point, there was a sort of fallout between Trump on the one hand and between John Bolton, his national security advisor, and Mike Pompeo on the other, because the latter two wanted maximum pressure as a goal in and of itself, pretty much, meaning pressuring the Iranian regime is the goal. On the other hand, Trump wanted to raise the pressure in order to have them then come to the table and make a deal, and he sort of believed that that would happen. And he tried to offer them to negotiate on various occasions. That didn't really come to fruition, and then the end of the administration came. And there was also, we were left with a question mark. Was there enough time for the maximum pressure to build in order to really have the effect that Trump hoped? So I think Trump's fundamental preference would be to do the same kind of plan and raise the pressure in the hopes that Iran would at some point come around to have a deal. On the other hand, what I think has changed now is that I do not see a potential, what we call a ZOPA, zone of potential agreement between the sides, because whatever deal, the terms of whatever deal Trump would look for, would be a significant limitations rollback of where Iran is right now as far as Iranian enrichment and a number of other factors. And it seems to me highly unlikely that Iran is going to agree to any deal that would be acceptable to Trump, much less to Israel. So it's possible at the moment, they're not even willing to talk. Even if they were willing to talk, I think it would probably be used as a strategy to draw out, to draw time, to allow them to advance on other fronts and work on other fronts and keep the negotiations alive. We've seen the Iranians act that way a number of times, and they know how to do it very well. Although I don't think that at the end of the day, there is a potential deal to be had.
Dr. Ben-Levi, I'd like to hear your perspective on this, since when we're looking at the broad scheme of things, right now the United States is pursuing a grand strategy in which it is seeking to hedge, or more accurately, to separate between the two most powerful rivals within the strategic power competition equation, namely removing China from Russia. And in that context, we see that immediately after the meeting that was held in Riyadh by the foreign secretary and or Secretary of State, excuse me, and the National Security Advisor and the U.S. Special Envoy for the Middle East, Steve Witkoff, we see the Russians sending Foreign Minister Sergei Lavrov to Iran for meetings to further deepen the strategic collaboration, as they put it. Is there something here that we need to be aware of when we're talking about the strategic nuances currently at play?
Well, I mean, we spoke about the roles of the different actors, so I agree with you. The role of the Europeans is to replace the snapback sanctions as soon as possible. I think here it's also important to remember that the more effective and damaging sanctions were actually not the ones that were put on through the UN Security Council resolutions, but rather the unilateral sanctions that were placed by the United States. If I go back to 2010, 2009-10, when the UN Security Council resolutions were had, I mean, they're good. They're a general framework. They add legitimacy. They allow other countries to get on board. But what really hurt Iran in 2012, 11 and 12 was the unilateral sanctions against the SWIFT, against the Iranian Central Bank. And these are all essentially decisions made by the United States saying if you are doing business with Iran, you're not doing business with us. So choose. And this is what really led to the economic pressure to build up over the course of a year that eventually allowed or the Iranians to start a negotiation. I think the role of Israel's role in this is to be definitely the bulldog. At some point, it might be actually to bite, right? And it's very important that Israel is able to make a credible military threat, because as you mentioned at the outset, there is no other country in the world who cares enough about this issue to actually send forces and take action. And almost everyone is opposed to an Iranian nuclear weapon. The United States, the Europeans, even the Russians will tell you they don't want a nuclear Iran. But no one is willing to take action to actually stop it when push comes to shove, except for Israel. And so Israel definitely needs to make sure it builds up its credible threat. It invests in building up the options that it can do on its own. That if it can receive additional help and whatever technology or munitions it needs from the United States, would help from the United States to be more forthcoming with that, so that then its credible threat would be more credible. And final thing that we need to remember here is that we should never expect a very clear green light from Washington. It's we didn't have one in 1981, the Ossi reactor, which Relic had the honor of participating in. We didn't have a green light in 2007 against the Syrian reactor. Where in both cases you could call it like a yellow light, maybe a wink in the case of Syria, right? And I'm not saying we should go against a very clear red light either. But the only thing that will convince the other powers in the world that this is a serious issue is if Israel is really willing to carry through on its threats, and that's what puts the issue on the table. That's what forces the external powers to take the issue seriously and make it a priority for themselves. So I think that's very important that Israel puts itself in that position, is willing to make the threat and make everyone believe that it really will do it.
With that being said, of course, the United States did slap Israel with sanctions after bombing the Osirak reactor in the early 80s. So we do also need to keep that in mind. But nonetheless,
I must interject. It delayed the delivery of airplanes for about 2 months and then forgot about it. And later on said, you know what, maybe it's not such a bad thing that Israel took out the reactor.
Right. Well, for Ben-Levi?
Yes. I think what Israel has achieved in the past 6 months or so has significantly changed the balance of power in the Middle East, with significantly degrading Hezbollah, which also led to the change in Syria and the fall of Assad, who was aligned with Iran, and kicking out the Iranian militias. So we're on trajectory for a very significant change to the Middle East. And what we have to do, though, is finish the job. And it's not just, of course, I said previously that Israel is the primary, who needs to be on the lead of this train. But as you said, to the globe, the region, no one is going to complain if the Iranian nuclear facilities blow up. People might say, "Oh, new a little bit," but no one wants that. No one wants a nuclear Iran, and so if Israel goes and is in the lead of taking it out, then maybe some people might say something publicly. They'll be opening bottles of champagne.
To thank all of your time as well. Until our next edition from here in Jerusalem. Shalom.